It's time to get the story behind the story. Interviews with newsmakers, news breakers, and Vermonters making a difference. WCAX presents 802 News with Mark Johnson. Here's Mark.
Two canoeists capsized last month on Lake Champlain. One dies, the other is stuck overnight after swimming to Knights Island. A few weeks ago, Stowe Rescue saves two men trapped at the top of Mount Mansfield who have inadequate gear and clothing. In this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company, survivor skills expert Jesse Krebs discusses how to properly prepare for an outdoor adventure and what to do when things go wrong. Krebs is a graduate of Air Force survival training. She lasted 46 days in the wilds of Labrador, Canada, on the TV show Alone. She runs an academy based in Colorado, Owl's Skills, which stands for Outdoorsy Women Learning Survival Skills. She's taught her course here in Vermont several times and at one point lived here for 8 months. She knows our woods and our mountains. In a moment, she'll share some of her wisdom and insights on outdoor survival. First, a word from our sponsor. At Red Hen Baking Company, they believe pure, uncomplicated ingredients in the hands of skilled artisans are the building blocks for great food. They're dedicated to creating the best food from the best ingredients. You'll find an ever-changing lineup of delicious pastries, sandwiches, and soups at their beautiful cafe off Route 2 in Middlesex, just off I-89. Their breads are also available in many other locations. Led by owners Randy George and Eliza Kane, Red Hen Baking Company has been on the leading edge of the local food movement since 1999. So what do you think are the most typical survival needs that the ordinary person would have here in Vermont?
Usually what happens is people get lost. That's one major concern, is people just getting disoriented. So I'll teach you like a scouting technique and different methods to pick a direction and keep going that direction. Like Vermont is beautiful and there's a lot of wilderness there. And if you pick a direction and walk, usually within a few hours, you're going to hit something man-made that you can use. A road, something, power lines, something that you can use, even a river, something not man-made that you can follow to usually downstream to find some kind of human habitation. So that's one of the things. Another is people, sometimes you're not that far from your home and you get injured, sometimes seriously injured. And even though it's not that far, home might be a quarter mile, a road might be half a mile away, and you've got a broken pelvis or a broken leg somehow, and getting to that location and sometimes it's very dense vegetation. So you're trying to get from point A to point B, and now if you add on that maybe it's raining or the temperature is dropping or it's turning to nightfall, and you're worrying about hypothermia and other exposure issues, now you've compounded things. So it doesn't have to be that quote unquote severe or that wilderness of a setting for things to go wrong. And frankly, it doesn't even have to be wilderness, right? We have people that are on the roof of their home as the water is rising, or they can't, getting out of the house is a challenge because so much snow has fallen, right? And maybe the power is out now and you're trying to survive. So the principles of survival and our basic needs apply no matter what situation we're in, whether we're in an urban or a wilderness survival situation. So it's just good concepts to know. And one of the biggest things that people don't understand, I think, is that there's confusion even in my industry. People think that survival and bushcrafting and ancestral skills and prepping, that all of these are the same thing. And they're not. Right? There's a big difference between survival, which is I was having fun, I was having a good time, or I'm just doing my life and something goes wrong. And now my whole goal, my mission is to try to get someplace safe. And that might be getting away from my home, that's sliding down a hill in a mudslide, or again, the flood is coming or whatever's happening there. It may be getting away from that, or it may be getting home from someplace else or getting to a hospital. Versus bushcrafting, ancestral skills, all that, the purpose is to stay out in the wilderness for as long as possible. Why would I go anywhere else, right? So they're very different goals. And I blame that for a large portion of why so few people know about signaling and what effective forms of signaling are. It's just not talked about. It's not the cool, sexy skill like fire is. So people don't usually know that there are 3 primary methods of signaling, and there are different sort of dialects or different parts of each one of those that you can use. And that signaling starts before you even leave home. If you're actually planning sometimes things just happen, but if you're actually planning some kind of an expedition, then you should be thinking about how you're going to signal if something goes wrong well before you step foot on the trail.
Tell me more about that. So, what should I be bringing out on a hike with me?
Some of it's environmental dependent, but one of the things you can do so there's ground to air signals. There are three primary types: ground to air signals, there are pyrotechnic types of signals, and then there are electronic signals, right? So nothing works as well as electronics unless they don't work.
Right.
So if the battery dies, the subscription's not up to date, you lost it in the water when you had to drop your pack because it was dragging you under the water when you were crossing, right? Whatever. If something happens to those electronics, you have to have the other two to fall back on, right? So depending exclusively on the electronics is not smart. And there would be time, even out on a loan, we'd have times where somehow the electronic communication between us and base would go down. And now they're scrambling, trying to get eyes on us to make sure we're okay. Any electrical system can go down at any time. There's no guarantee that's going to work. So the other two, so ground to air signals, these are things like signal mirrors. You need to know how to use them though, right? So you can get by a commercial signal mirror. And if you have anything shiny, as long as you know a basic technique on how to use that, you can use anything shiny and it takes minimal effort and input and can go for dozens of miles, right, to get a hold of someone, to get someone's attention. So signal mirrors are one type of ground air signal. Another is strip signals. People often think of SOS, but we don't do SOS. SOS, a ground air strip signal should be, I like to tell people, at least 30 feet tall, at least 30 foot. And I don't know about everybody else's artistic skills, but trying to make an SOS on the ground at least 30 feet, so three letters, 30 feet tall that actually look like an S and an O and an S from the air is
Hmm.
difficult.
Yep.
In addition to that, Mother Nature, she's curvy. From the air, it's mountains and rivers and hills, and it's all curvaceous. So an S and an O and an S just tend to blend right in. So instead, we're going to do either a V or an X. Those straight lines scream man-made, and that's much easier. I put a stake in the ground, walk 30 feet, put another stake in the ground, and stretch a line between the two or eyeball that and make a nice crisp straight line, right? And then fill that in. If it's snow, you can just stomp down the snow and maybe put ashes or pull from the side of the meadow, pull other colors and fill in the area, right? It's a 6-to-1 ratio, so nice bold letters for every 6 feet long. A signal is it's 1 foot wide. So if it's 30 feet long, it's going to be 5 feet wide, right? And again, just doing a V or an X. And that catches someone's attention. So that's the second type, right? So we've gotten two different types of ground to air signals now, signal mirrors and strip signals. Another really effective one that's easy to carry is sea dye marker, SEA, so like the ocean. So you can use sea dye marker, or literally you got leftover food coloring from Easter or something, right? A few pellets of food coloring, mix that in, and there's so often snow in Vermont, right? Or these beautiful little ponds and things that you can use. And food coloring won't do anything in a pond, right? But on snow, it certainly can. So if you're minimal, you can't move around that much. If you can crush up, some of those tablets or mix it with a little bit of snow and then throw it one way and throw it another way to make a V, that's purple or blue or orange, whatever color you've got, that can be a quick signal. And sea dye marker, you can add that into water and it turns up a small pond, the whole thing will turn like a fluorescent yellowish green. And that catches attention too, right? So those are different types of ground to air signals. And so you can think of what you would need to carry with you to do that, right? To do any of those. So a small compact mirror in a pocket, right? Or having a small plastic signal mirror that just hangs around your neck so it's easy access whenever you need it. And having like sea dye marker or food coloring, right? Just taped together in a little thing and stick it in a pocket. Those can work great. Electronic, hey, maybe, most of the places in Vermont, your phone will work just fine. Some places it won't, right? You get up to the Northeast Kingdom in some areas that are a little more remote and it's
Right.
not going to work. So that's when you might want something more like a Garmin Mini InReach or something along those lines. And of course, if you're skiing, if it's avalanche season, having your own personal locator beacon, right? A PLB that you can have on you can be important. Anyway, so those are different ground to air signals. Pyrotechnics, do you have some way to start a fire, right? And again, it can happen, anything can happen anytime. So I tell people, even in your vehicle, there's been people who end up in their vehicle and they end up in trouble, and they have in their vehicle, usually in the trunk, everything they would need to survive for a few days. and then they're pinned in the vehicle, right? They slide off the embankment, they hit a tree, and now they're pinned in the driver's seat and they can't get out. So all that stuff in the trunk is doing them absolutely no good. So making sure I usually have at least two road flares, one behind the passenger seat, right, in the pocket that I can just grab if I need to, and one in the little slot in the door that's next to my left-hand side, along with a bunch of other little survival stuff, right? So I have a little survival kit that's within arm's reach of me when I'm in the driver's seat. So having things like those available. So pyrotechnics, right? There are man-made things we can use, marine flares, that kind of thing. And marine flares could actually work pretty well in Vermont. Sometimes you get really thick forested areas, and it would be hard for anybody to see you if you did something from the ground. But if you set up something where you can shoot a flare basically up through that canopy, that can show up really well. So marine flares can be something you can carry with you, or you can just have a way to make a fire and know that if you put green vegetation on a fire, you're gonna create lots of white smoke, which is
Hmm.
good when it's summertime. If you want black smoke, then you're gonna find birch bark or pitchwood, which is also sapwood or fatwood, right? Which is usually from your conifers, and that will create black smoke. And or sometimes, I've been in really weird places and found tires, right? So if you find some rubber or you have your vehicle with you and you're trying to do some kind of pyrotechnics, then taking off the tires or taking out trim, anything plastic, draining the oil pan, right? And putting that in a safe area and setting that on fire and putting off black smoke in a winter environment can really contrast and get somebody to you. So
That's
those are your
that.
three memories.
Yeah. So who's going to see all these signals that I send?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a main thing with pyrotechnics in particular is to do them when you think someone's actually going to see them. There have been cases where people burned all their tires before rescue showed up. And by the time rescue showed up, they didn't feel like they had anything else left to burn, right? So pyrotechnics in particular, you're going to wait until you think someone is actually going to see it. But the other things, right? If I'm doing, like there was a woman in Death Valley with her son and their dog, and they were out there for 5 days, and they're down in the valley in July, right? And you think of how many shiny things. Now, a magnified mirror will not work for a signal mirror. It needs to be just a flat, regular mirror. So usually in your visors, that's where you find those. So if she had just rip off one of those visors, stick her head out in the sun and start hammering the ridge lines around her, just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, right? And do that whenever she can, whenever she's feeling up to it. The people on those ridge lines, I mean, there's going to be hundreds of people walking on those ridge lines, usually in the morning when it's still cool, and in the evening when the sun starts to go down. It's middle of summer, so they're going to do it in those. So just start hammering those ridge lines. Part of the problem with them 5 days before they figured out where she was. She wasn't sure where she was going to the park. She told different people different things. So no, but they didn't know where she was when she didn't show up for work. So it took them 5 days to locate her, and she ended up in trouble on the first day. She got a flat tire, right? And fixed the first flat tire and then kept going. And then the front end of her car fell into an animal burrow. Something had burrowed under the road. And so she was stuck. So day one, she's having problems and it took them 5 days, right? If she had just known signaling and started hammering those ridge lines every morning and evening, there's no way it would have taken that long to find her, right?
Hmm.
She could have been out of that situation a lot faster. So even if you can't see the people, it's a good idea to use things like that, or like a strip signal, a big V or an X on the ground. I mean, we have satellites now, right? We've had people shipwrecked on deserted tiny little islands all over the world now, where someone thousands of miles away is playing around on Google Maps, daydreaming of their next vacation, and literally zooms in on an island and finds an SOS, right, written in rocks on the sand and gets them rescued. Some of these things, pyrotechnics only when you see someone, but the electronics, you're going to broadcast, right? If you've got any of your ground to air type signals, I'm going to try to put them out there and hope that somebody's going to see it.
I'm guessing here that I think one of the mistakes people make is they say, "Oh, I've got my iPhone with me,
Yeah,
therefore I've got maps, I've got a way to communicate with people." But that seems like probably not the wisest thing to do.
correct. I mean, you look at this situation with the canoers, unless they have a darn good waterproof case
Right.
and they've made sure that that phone is attached to them. So when they capsize, they're actually going to have a working phone with them. It literally is useless, absolutely useless. It's either going to be at the bottom of Lake Champlain or it's going to be completely waterlogged and not function. So you need to have other methods, right, of signaling. And I just read what was out so far, and it sounds like there's still a lot more investigation to be done. But it sounds like, they probably were not dressed and they weren't thinking about if we capsize, what are we going to do? So that's signaling again, it starts ahead of time. Did anyone know, that they were out there? And it sounds like he had to swim to an island, survive the night with soaking wet clothes, right? And luckily got into the caretaker's home. It sounds like was able to stay alive, but then had to find a boat and paddle somewhere else before they could actually get somebody out there to help his friend. That's far too long, right? If you capsize in cold, chilly water, especially close to evening. So that needed to be, if they had told someone, hey, if we're not back in 2 hours, or we're not back by 5 o'clock tonight, please alert search and rescue. There's a problem if you don't hear from us, right? It's really simple and easy to do. It's usually best to do that with at least two people, right? Two separate people and say, hey, and you don't tell them when you plan to be back. If you plan to be back by 5, you don't tell them to contact by 5. You say you give yourself a little bit of a buffer, right? And if I'm only going for a few hours, and that's literally the most dangerous type of outdoor activity is a day hike or a day trip because people expect to be back that night and they don't bring critical medications. They don't bring a survival kit that will keep them alive if they do need to stay out overnight. They don't tell people, hey, if I'm not back, this is what's going on. We think about that for some reason a lot more for longer expeditions, but not for day hikes. And that's why day hikes and day trips are the most dangerous because we don't do that ahead of time.
Yeah, and this time of the year, it's the water is quite cold in Lake Champlain. The other thing that really struck me about that case, I mean, I think you're right. Rule number one, you got to let somebody know what you're doing. Number two is, they left at 2:30 in the afternoon. That seems a little late for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, depending on how far they're going. I mean, there's definitely times when I love night kayaking and canoeing. I love it at night. Moon's on the water, it's quiet, it's beautiful, right? I love that kind of thing. And have your signaling, have everything prepared, right? Let somebody know. But yeah, search and rescue is much less likely to go looking for people at night. It puts their rescuers, it puts the volunteers and the searchers in a lot more danger if they're having to do it at night. So all of that are things to keep in mind, right? And if I think if I'm going to leave at 2:30 and I say I'm going to be back, I plan to be back at 5, then I would say somebody, look, they don't even know, they don't need to know when I'm planning to be back. Just need to know one time, right? One date, one time. If you do not hear from me by this time on this day, call search and rescue, call the local police, tell them what's going on. And you can also take photos, right? It's so easy now with our phones to take photos. Hey, you take a picture of me, I'm going to take a picture of you, right? Just before we get in the boat, we can take a picture of the boat, we can take a picture of where we're leaving from and send all that to these two people. And now search and rescue has all that information right away. They know what you look like, what you were wearing, what the boat, where you were headed, right? They have all that information, and that's so much better for you, right? As a survivor, to have all that, they have all that information, makes it way easier for them, and they're way more likely to find you quickly and efficiently, which helps keep them from being put in as much danger either, right? So it's
Mhm.
heartbreaking to hear somebody end up in trouble or dead in the backcountry. And even, it's so much worse when you hear that rescuers and volunteers have died while trying to help somebody else out, right? And if they'd had more information, it would have made their lives safer and easier as well.
Unless they were trained the way you've been trained, the idea of going out alone is probably really a bad idea.
I always leave that up to people. I mean, it always is going to be safer to have somebody else with you. Although I say always, it's not actually the case. If somebody is way less experienced than you are, right? If I'm going out there alone, I feel like I'm way safer than if I go out there with somebody who's very inexperienced because I'm going to be distracted and trying to help them function and trying to keep them safe. So it really depends on the person. But for me personally, it's like if I want to go out there solo, I know I'm taking a bigger risk a lot of the time, and I'm perfectly fine with dying out there. If that's the way I go, that's the way I'd prefer to go, right? And so understanding that ahead of time, I'd rather not, but if it happens, that's okay. And I know there are always extremely extenuating circumstances, right? Each one of us right now could be hit by a meteor that falls out of the sky, right? The odds are pretty slim, but there's always a chance that something can go so catastrophically wrong that there's really nothing else you could have done about it, and you're just going to end up dead, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Death is part of life.
Yeah.
And it's if you're ready to go, then you're ready to go. I mean, a lot of search and rescue. I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a fair amount of cases every year, right, where they hear about somebody going off and they're like, well, were they suicidal? Because people take off literally because they're like, I don't want to die in my bed at home. I don't want to be in a car crash. I don't, and I'm not feeling happy with my life and I'm ready to move on. And so they go out and find a nice peaceful spot in the middle of nowhere or jump off a cliff or whatever works for them. And to me, that's okay as well if that's their choice and that's what they really feel they need to do. So yeah, it just depends on who you are, what you're
Hmm.
doing. But most people that are going out there, especially again for those day trips, they're just looking for a fun time. And they would like to be rescued. They would like, if something goes wrong, they would like some help. So telling people ahead of time is a smart idea.
What are the two or three biggest mistakes people make?
Not preparing ahead of time, not telling someone what's going on, not taking a survival kit and knowing how to use what's in that survival kit. People have an idea, I think, of a survival kit as being something big and cumbersome, and I have people come to my classes that are trail runners. They don't carry much, right? They're often in shorts and a tank top, and they might have a water bladder kind of backpack behind them, on their back, and that's, they got tennis shoes, and that's all they're taking. And it's like, okay, can I give you, something the size of a soda can, right? The size and not even quite as heavy as a soda can, and that can have enough things in it that it will make the difference between you surviving a night, an uncomfortable night. You're not going to be comfy, but it'll make the difference between you either surviving an uncomfortable night or not making it home at all. And that's worth it, right? Absolutely. So taking a survival kit and knowing how to use what's in it. And a lot of people will either just buy a survival kit and then don't open it and they don't practice it. And I'm like, if you really feel like I don't like people buying kits, to me, it's much smarter to make your own. Everybody is different. And usually, the less you know, the more you need to carry. And I make a joke like people will have like a sewing kit and a survival kit that they bought. And it's like, is this for sewing lingerie? Because the thread is so thin and flimsy,
Hmm.
it's not gonna really do what you need it to do. I'm like, take some dental floss, and a sail needle, and how to carry that kit to make it the weight more distributed and make sure it's going to be on you when you really need it. There's cases of backpackers being like, oh, I'm backpacking, so my backpack has everything I need, so my backpack's my survival kit. And it's like, no, it's not, because there's time after time after time of people setting down their backpack, or it gets lost in an avalanche, or something happens and they're separated from it and they never find it again. And because they didn't have anything in their pockets and on their person when that pack was ripped away from them, they're in trouble again. So I think that's the biggest one is just make sure you've got things in your pocket. And there are five basic needs. And so I'll tell people to go through those five basic needs before they head on any trip, whether it's a long one, short one, day hike, I don't care. You just go through those five basic needs and make sure you have something to meet each of those five basic needs for that particular environment. So what I need going up a 14,000-foot peak here in Colorado in the fall versus what I need in the middle of summer in Vermont, those are going to look different, right? There's no water up at 14,000 feet, right? Unless there's snow, maybe at that point already, right? In Colorado. Okay, great. Do I know how to melt the snow? Do I have things around, a waterproof container and so on and so forth? So those are going to change. But the five basic needs, I use my fingers and it's just a way to remember them. They're in no particular order because we don't know what's going to happen, right? And situations change. So I call one and done is signaling, right? One and done. You do it quickly, do it efficiently, do it effectively, and you're done. You don't have to worry about the other four. You're back home, you're in a hospital, situation's over. So one and done, signaling, we talked about the three basic types there. Two is take care of you, and this is personal protection. There are three things underneath personal protection, and mostly what it's dealing with is thermal regulation. So when we say someone died of exposure, it's usually because they weren't thermally regulating. And so the three things underneath personal protection are in order. First thing you're going to beef up is your clothing and any equipment you have. Right? So if you have a car, Awesome. So many materials in that car that you can use. And you can beef up your clothing by ripping out the seat cushions and stuffing your clothes and creating more dead air space, right? If I'm not in a car, great. Then I'm out in the wilderness and I just have my flimsy shorts and whatever. Hopefully I brought some really lightweight frog togs or even a garbage bag or something that I can stuff with debris, right? To create a lot of like basically a sleeping bag. And now I can climb in. So that's part of my equipment. So clothing equipment, number one, under personal protection. Second, if that's not going to be adequate, you're going to make a shelter. And the last line of defense is fire. A lot of people skip straight to fire and end up dying as a consequence because they're not warm enough to even get that fire going, right? And they die before they can get it started. Okay, so that's all under category two, personal protection, clothing equipment, shelter, and fire. Number three, go pee. So this is sustenance, water being absolutely way more important than food, right? We are designed to go without food. So unless you have some pre-existing condition like diabetes or something that requires you to eat more often, it's mostly water that I'm concerned with. Most survival situations last on average 3 days. Some people get rescued much sooner, some people go months, but on average 3 days is what you're looking at. I can also go without water for about 3 days. Some people have made it up to a week, right? There's a few cases where people actually survived a week without it, especially in a more humid environment like Vermont. So if they do very little motion, very little activity, they can get away with it, right? So number three, go pee. If you don't have to go pee, go drink some more water. If you don't have the water to drink, go get it. If you don't have a way to disinfect it, drink it anyway. Deal with consequences later. So three, go pee. Four, explore. This is your travel techniques, navigation. Right, so how to use a map and a compass, how to use a basic scouting technique, how to not get more lost. Another critical thing people do is they feel lost, their anxiety starts to go up, and they just keep moving, having no idea which way is which.
Hmm.
And until we get out of lizard brain, when we panic like that and we're in lizard brain, we just make the situation worse. So we need to stop, assess the situation, calm our breathing, make sure we're in the prefrontal cortex, and then we can start to make some decisions, right? We can pick a direction, we can decide we're not in good enough shape and do some signaling, whatever. But if we just blindly keep going, we just make the situation worse. Okay. So four, explore. And then five is stay alive. And this is everything having to do with health. So mental and emotional health being a number one. Right. Again, I'm not going to make good decisions until I calm down. So making ourselves, when we're in that lizard brain, we want to go, 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 fight, flight, flee. Right. We want to do something. And if we have to just take deep breaths, sit down, calm down. So mental and emotional health. Then there's everything having to do with hygiene. How do you poop in the woods? Right? How do you keep yourself clean? And then third is everything first aid, which is a huge category. There's a lot in first aid, and I think everyone should have at least a first aid course. Better is for a wilderness first responder. And I use those skills probably more in the front country actually than I do the back country because the front country is a lot more dangerous actually than the back country. Anyway, so
Yeah,
five basic needs.
it's interesting that sometimes doing nothing can be the best option.
Mm-hmm. You bet. Deliberately, like choosing, nope, I'm just going to sit. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to let my eyes focus on one thing. I'm not going to think about the situation for a moment. I'm going to tell myself I'm safe, right? Mantras work fantastic. I'm safe. I'm okay. There's no problem right now. If I needed to, hopefully if you got a survival kit or you know what's going, you'd be like, I can pull together that debris over there and just have an uncomfortable night, but I can sleep right here. It's no big deal. The best survivors, the age of the best survivors, the age group that survives the best are 3 to 7 year olds.
Huh. Okay. Because they don't think as much as we do.
Exactly, right? The world, like they're used to it's still a magical planet, right? And if they need something they're very hedonistic. If they're cold, they'll crawl underneath those leaves in something that kind of looks like a blanket. Or they'll look for the densest cover they can find that kind of looks like a house. If something looks, they're hungry and they see something, they'll try to eat it. If it doesn't taste good, bleh, they spit it back out. If they're thirsty, they just drop down to the creek and they drink. They're not thinking about I've got to be the wilderness is scary and not safe and I have to be somewhere else to be safe. And that's what we tend to do is when we get beyond that 7 year old stage, we have this drive of like, I can't, wilderness isn't safe. I can't be here. And that's media telling us that, right? None of us would be here right now if our ancestors hadn't considered wilderness home. If they hadn't been able to live and meet all their needs in wilderness, We still have that in our genetics. We still have that ability. The wilderness provides everything we need. If we can relax, chill out, think rationally, think about those five basic needs, we're going to be okay. And if we can tell ourselves that and really focus on that, to be able to think clearly and make healthy decisions, then it's going to go well. You're okay.
Let's talk a little bit about making this survival kit as you talk about what's the best product to make it in, the material, etc.
There are two basic ways to carry a survival kit, one container method or a scatter method. I'm a fan of the scatter method. That works for me better for most situations. If I'm going on, again, a day hike or even longer, if I do more of an expedition, usually I'm wearing cargo pants and like I have a threaded needle that I keep in my hat, and I've done that since the military. So it's threaded. All I have to do is undaisy chain it, and I can sew up a broken, a seam that's ripping or a rip in my clothing if I need to. And I might have, my knife is usually in my right pocket. I might have a second smaller knife in my left pocket along with a lighter. Then I might have a survival bracelet or a small daisy chain of line in another pocket. I might have a space blanket or tightly, one that's not been unfolded garbage bag, in a pocket. Usually my shoelaces I replace them with 550 cord paracord instead. The hat band around my hat, I usually take that off and put 550 cord there instead. So I like the scatter method. And if you lose part of your kit with the scatter method, you've got the rest of it, right? And you can have backups in different places. If a pocket gets ripped off or something falls out, you've got the rest of it. A one container method is often really nice for like a car kit. Again, keeping it within reach of the driver, but especially if you have kids, you don't want bits of survival gear scattered all around the car that little fingers can grab and potentially get in trouble with. So having a one container and having it under your seat, under the driver's seat, or in the center console next to you, or in that little pocket right next to the door, that can be great. And if you have a lot of people in the car, right? If you usually travel with your family, let's say, then I can have a small kit up front for me if anything happens to me. But if I happen to be with the rest of my family, I can literally have like a cooking pot, right? That has a lid on it that fits nice and tight. And in that cooking pot that just always stays in the trunk and in the back, I've got water containers. I have a little bit of some snack food. I have everything, right? I have a little first aid kit. I've got something to make a shelter with, and so on and so forth. So, like usually the back of my car, I have a tarp laying down in the back of my car anyway. So if I ever needed to, I can just take out that tarp and that I can improvise that into a sleeping bag, a signal, a shelter, all kinds of things, right, that I can do with that. So there are different ways in which you can make it. And again, that's why I encourage people to make their own versus just trying to buy one off the shelf. If you are going to buy one from someone that you think is reputable and whatever, it's actually a good idea to buy two of the identical kit, one of which you're going to take apart and shred, right? You're going to use everything that's in there, and that will give you a good idea of, now I know what I want to replace and what things I want to take out and what things I might want to add to that instead. And it gives you things to practice with. Like people think, oh, I see people using a ferro rod, right? Something that makes sparks. I see that all the time on TV. It looks so easy. Right?
Yeah.
And they never practice, or they don't realize that the ferro rod is covered in paint, right? To keep it from degrading and to keep it from accidentally sparking in transit. And it won't spark at all until they get all that paint off of it. Right? And there's several different techniques and how to get a hot enough spark and how you have to prep your tinder. So there's a lot more that goes into that than you might think. And if you haven't practiced ahead of time, your odds of actually getting it when now maybe you have a broken wrist or a broken pelvis, or you're lost and cold and it's raining, like your odds of success now in an actual survival situation are pretty minimal if you haven't even practiced in it in good conditions,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and plus your state of mind is crazy and your is heightened.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, hunters, because it's beautiful, they're out there, they're getting meat off of the land, right? They're harvesting these beautiful animals that have had wild feed and had a free life versus getting it from a factory farm somewhere. But you're out there hunting and now you just shot the animal and it was like 20 minutes before you wouldn't be able to shoot anymore. And of course, now the animal's there and you just shot it. And now you're trying to travel and follow the blood track. And it went a little further than you were hoping for before it finally laid down and passed on. And now you've got it gutted and skinned and butchered and you've got everything. You put it in your pack and then you stand up and you're like, I'm going to head back to the truck. Oops. Where am I exactly now? And of course, now it's full dark. Often it started snowing. It's covered up any tracks you had on the way there. So now you're in trouble. And they often, or they fall in a creek, right? Or they fall in something and so they're in trouble and they'll try to start a fire, they'll try to do things and they're using conventional wisdom, which actually tends to get people in trouble. And so they'll try to go straight to fire before beefing up their clothing and making sure they have a good sleeping bag to climb into, and then building a shelter if they need it. Fire is your last line of defense. And so we'll often find hunters that are frozen solid, right, died of hypothermia in the middle of like unscrewing bullets trying to get gunpowder to restart a fire because they didn't have a tinder with them. They brought a lighter, but they don't have any tinder, right? And they don't know how to find it in the environment they're in. So people just end up in trouble a lot. And I shouldn't say a lot. Again, you're way more likely to die in a car accident, right? Or slip in the
Right.
bathtub and fall and end up in trouble, fall off a ladder, right? Way more likely for those things to happen to actually end up in trouble in the wilderness. But when it does happen, there are common problems that we have, and we see the same problems over and over again. So understanding, like reading some stories, what happens to people in this environment, and what things can I take with me, and what knowledge can I gain to help prevent that? Another common thing people do is like it's unfortunately the Boy Scouts often still teaches this. If you're cold, just keep hiking or do jumping jacks. Something along those, just keep moving. The problem with that is it's dead airspace that insulates us, that keeps us warm. Dead airspace, not moving space. So by jumping jacks and walking and continuing moving, you're putting yourself in way more danger by continually moving like that. If you're hiking, you're getting further and further away from the point last known or the point last seen, which is what rescue is going off of. And you're not sleeping. You're way more likely to get injured using up calories and water. This is not a smart idea. So if instead we stay still, we insulate ourselves as best we can and use macro muscles, micro movements, right? So anybody can try this. If you're sitting at home right now and you're a little chilly, you just clench everything together. So clench your arms to your side, put your hands into fists, clench your thighs, calves, feet together, crunch up your toes, clench everything for a few seconds and release. And clench and release. And you just keep doing that. And now you're generating crazy amounts of heat and you're keeping it. Versus if you move every time, all that movement, it flushes out the warm air that your body just warmed up and now it pulls in cold air. And so, sure, you're generating heat. We can generate up to 18 times the amount of heat by exercising, but we're giving it all away to the environment and we have to keep doing it. And when you're starting to get sleep deprived, again, it's dark, right? This is not a good scenario. So knowing some basic concepts of how to keep yourself warm and comfortable and how to make a sleeping bag. All a sleeping bag is a lot of dead airspace. There's a lot of things out there I can make dead airspace out of, right? We think of punk wood. Punk wood is the stuff that just crumbles when you pick it up,
Yep.
which is horrible for building a fire. It doesn't have much carbon value, but it's like cork. It's really insulative. So stuff the bottom of your pant legs into your socks and fill your pants up with dry punk wood. Yay! Now I've just made myself a pair of snow pants, basically, right? I'm going to be way more insulated. There are simple concepts, and you don't have to carry as much in that survival kit if you understand some of these basic concepts and you know what environment you're walking into. And if I know there's plenty of punk wood out there, maybe it won't take as much insulative stuff, right? But if I'm going again, I'm here in Colorado and I'm going above 11,000 feet, there are no trees above 11,000 feet. So now, if you have to sit down, if you're injured and something happens and you need to sit down, I'm going to take just a square big enough for my butt of some kind of a poly pad, right? Something that's a nice insulative pad that I can put under my butt so I can actually literally sit down. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting in the snow, right? Or having to
Mhm.
take off my shoes and sit on my shoes and then try to keep my feet warm some other way. It's not a good scenario. So each environment requires its own survival kit, and you need to be thinking about all of these things before you head into that environment.
So if you were in Vermont, what would you put in your survival bag in Vermont?
Sure. So let's do a quick scenario. Let's pretend it's like this time of year right now.
Yep.
So it's fall, night's getting pretty cold, pretty chilly. We definitely want something insulative. So if I go number one, what am I going to use for signaling? Not snow on the ground yet, so probably sea dye marker isn't going to work that well. But a mylar blanket, those space blankets, that could be pretty useful. I might even take two of them. They're really reflective. If sunlight hits those suckers, man, they are blinding. So that can be nice. It can be used for several things. If it does rain, I can collect rainwater in it, which I don't have to disinfect, so I can drink with that. I can use it for signaling. I can use it to reflect my heat back at me and actually wrap it around me if I need to. I can even put it up as a small shelter. It's not fantastic, but it can give me a little bit of a shelter, which is nice, right? So maybe I'm going to take that as one of my signaling things because I can use it for a whole lot of different things. I'm going to take my phone, or if I'm in an area where I'm not sure if my phone will work, then maybe I'm going to take some kind of electronic signaling device. I might take some sea dye marker, right? That stuff that turns that fluorescent yellowish green. That could be useful. So those are some different things I could stick in my pocket for signaling, right? And literally, a signal mirror as well if I have a little compact. Okay, so my signaling stuff, I can have a couple of ounces of things on me that are going to make it way more likely I'm going to get out of that situation a lot faster, right? In addition to, again, communicating to anyone. So two, take care of you, right? So now we're in personal protection. So what do I have for clothing and equipment? This is not the time to be going out, even if it's warm, to be going out in shorts and a tank top. Even if you're trail running, and if that's what you're going to trail run in, this is the type of time of year I'm going to want to take at least some rather loose, kind of baggy rain gear. And so if I have some lightweight, like frog togs, something along those lines that roll up really small and really lightweight, great. That's going to be basically something that I can insulate using what's around me. I make a joke, but it's not very funny that the outdoor fashion industry is trying to kill women, right? Because if it's dead airspace that keeps us warm, they don't make clothing for women that's loose and baggy. They make it all form fitting, which means there's no dead airspace. It makes it very difficult. And a lot of people like leggings now.
Hmm.
Again, leggings, there's no dead airspace in that. It does not keep you that much warmer. But if I have loose leggings that I can stuff full of punk wood or leaves or debris, now we're talking. That's a little bit better. Okay, so clothing equipment, I'm going to focus on what do I have if I have to spend out overnight out here, what clothing would I like to have, right? And that can be minimal, but it needs to be something. And part of that equipment is a sleeping bag. Okay, so again, a garbage bag. I bought at a thrift store at one point, just a piece of nylon, ripstop nylon that had been folded in half and sewn along one side. And so it's lighter weight even than a trash bag. And it's very durable. So I can stuff that full of debris again and to wad it up and hold it weighs maybe an ounce, if even that, half ounce when I wad it up. And it's so durable and strong, and my whole body can fit into it, and I can stuff it full of debris, and that's going to be my sleeping bag, right?
Hmm.
So under personal protection, clothing equipment, we've got what are we wearing and what can we use for a sleeping bag that night. I can also, part of that equipment is stuff like what do I have for a knife? And that can literally be a razor blade, right? I'll take razor blades, keep them wrapped in the cardboard that they originally came in, and soak them in some olive oil, and then wrapping them in a small piece of tape. And now it's about a third the size of a credit card. And that's my knife. If I need a knife and I don't have any other knife, this is useful, right? For all kinds of things. So a knife, a headlamp is nice. You can get little keychain lights. It doesn't have to be much, right? That I can use. Rope, line can be used for so many different things. There's a reason why survival bracelets are so popular. If they're made out of 550 cord, which is paracord, then you have the outer sheath and then you have 7 pieces of inner core. Each one will hold like 30 to 40 pounds. Great. So now if I'm in trouble, I can cut off the two ends of a 6 foot piece of line that was used to make my bracelet and pull out that inner core. And now I have almost 50 feet of line, right, to work with that I can use to put up a shelter, make a splint, whatever I need to do. Okay. So that's all part of equipment. So clothing and equipment, first part of personal protection. Second is shelter, right? We already talked about I can, if I need to, I can use that space blanket. I could bring two of them. So I have one kind of to collect water or use a signaling while I'm using the other one as a shelter, so on and so forth. And then third is fire. What do you have for ignition? Good to have at least two different ways to ignite. And then just one really good quality tinder. Have that with you or know how to find it if you've got an area where that's plentiful. And this time of year, usually things, if it's dry, right, you can usually find a lot of things to light. Just make sure you practice ahead of time. So that takes care of two, personal protection. Three, go pee. What do you have for water? Do you have some kind of a water container? I'll tell, like, again, my trail runners, a non-lubricated condom will hold almost a gallon of water. So if you have a small sock,
Jeez.
like we always have extra socks right around that we're not using, where'd the other one go? Who knows? It's the mystery of the universe. So take one of your spare socks and a non-lubricated condom And you can use that as an improvised carrying container, right? But they have all kinds of improvised ones now too, right? Ones that are very collapsible and very easy to use. So have some kind of a water container. I've always got my water bottle on me. It just dangles off my wrist. I have a line attached to it. All right. So what do you have for water? If you're worried about getting sick, if you need to, then take some kind of chemical disinfectant, right? There's a lot of filters now, but they're big and they can be bulky. So I like just a small bottle of iodine and maybe a handkerchief. So I run the water through the handkerchief into my container, and then I throw an iodine tablet in it and I'm good to go. Food, I could care less, but if someone, again, has diabetes or gets hangry and can't focus if they don't have food, great, then throw a couple granola bars or something in there. Four, explore. Do you have even a small button compass? In Vermont, it can get kind of crazy trying to find direction if it's cloudy. If it's really cloudy and deep forested, it can be really tricky trying to figure out what direction is which. So having just a tiny button compass to help you show you where your cardinal are. And before you even head out, where are your handrails for the area you're going to? And a handrail is something like a river or a creek or a major mountain range or line, right? Or power lines or a major highway or road. And so if you know, oh, this whole area, I'm going to be in the Northeast Kingdom and I'm up there playing and I'm going in this deep woods area, but I know to the east of me, there's a major river. And to the south of me, there's a major road that's going east-west. If I go either of those directions, I'm going to hit one of those. No doubt. Great. So now I got a compass and I know a direction I'm going if I end up in trouble. That's something also to tell those two people that you've told before you went on this trip, hey, if anything goes wrong, I'm going either east or south, or just pick one of those and that's what you do. And now that cuts off a lot of search area for search and rescue, and they have a better idea of where you are, right? And where you're going to pop out. Always a good idea to have a paper map as well, and it's easy now, right? If you got a printer and a computer, get on
Mm.
Caltopo or Gaia or any of those, and they have free apps. You can print out a topo map of the area you're going to. So if your phone dies or something, you have that backup paper map. And then five, stay alive. So what medical needs do you have? Always take critical meds, at least for twice the estimated length of stay. So if I think I'm going out for just a day, have enough meds for at least 2 days. What are common injuries people have, and have a little first aid kit and know how to use what's in it. And there you go, right? And if you want toilet paper, if you want toothpaste, you can add all that kind of stuff if you want. But minimal, I want to at least be able to take care of my medical first aid kind of things. Making sense?
Yeah, speaking of sense, bring common sense too. I have a friend who just recently climbed Camel's Hump,
Hmm.
and it was a beautiful day at the bottom, and then by the time she got up to the top, it gets really rocky up there, and it was covered in ice by
Oof.
the time, and she got up fine, but I was reading her account of trying to get down, and she was sort of proud of herself for having kind of slid down on it. And I thought, you stop when you see ice, and you live to climb another day.
Yeah, yeah. And there's things, I don't know how many walking sticks I've made for people. And you can, with ice like that, you can, if you have a little bit of line, tie a couple of branches to your feet, right? If you didn't bring yak tracks or something that'll grip the ice, improvise something. And you can literally just, and it's not, you can improvise really terrible looking but functional snowshoes pretty quickly, right? And
Hmm.
same thing if you've got ice, if you find some good branches and just tie them literally to the bottom of your feet, to your shoes, that can help grip that snow and that ice to keep you from sliding around like that. Because yeah, uncontrolled sliding, generally not a good idea.
Yeah. And I can imagine people listening to this are saying, well, Mark, I'm just going for the day up to the top of Camel's Hump. Do I really need to go through all this? But a little preparation can go a long way if things go squirrely.
Exactly. Yeah, if we knew what was going to happen, we wouldn't have done it, right? We would have made
Right.
other decisions. And you can read and see, I love that there's a show I Shouldn't Be Alive. And it's you watch that. The one thing that's missing on that is really telling people what they could have done differently and at each stage, what they could have done differently to prevent the whole thing from happening. And sometimes they end up dead, or people in the crew, right, that were with them end up dead, which was very preventable if they had just taken some basic things. Nobody thinks it's going to happen to them,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to be fine. It's just a day hike. And again, those are the most dangerous because people aren't expecting to stay out overnight. And
Yeah.
literally one sprained ankle, one bad storm comes in, one slip on ice, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, I am 3 miles from my car, and now I can't walk, and it's getting dark,
And my
and it's
phone battery
cold.
is gone.
My
Yeah,
phone's gone.
yeah.
Yep. And it's nighttime, and a lot of I don't have, maybe there's nothing to burn, or I can't even get around to get a fire going right now because I can't, I don't have much mobility. Yeah, things can go wrong pretty quickly. So a little bit of preparation, like you're saying, goes a long way. And I went through it kind of detailed, but when you start to do this, and if you have those items already there, right? You just go through, okay, what do I have for this? What do I have for signaling? Great, I got that and that. Sweet. What do I have for clothing equipment? Okay, I'm gonna, oh yeah, maybe I will grab that windbreaker I've got, in the corner. I'll just tie that around my waist. Okay, and then what do I have for a sleeping bag if I need it? Oh yeah, I've got that. I'll just grab a small sheet or something, right? And throw that in next to my water and my back and my backpack. And what do I have for shelter? Okay, oh, let me grab that space blanket over there and let me fire. Oh, just grab a lighter. I'm going to grab that lighter and yeah, I've got a magnifying glass or something, whatever, right? And stick that in your pocket. And what do I have for tinder? Oh yeah, I'll just literally go grab some dryer lint. Okay, I'm good for that. So what's the third one? Oh, go pee. Okay, water. Oh, I'm going to have my water bottle and let me grab that bottle of iodine, right? And okay, now what do I have for compass, for travel stuff? Oh, yep, I've got my compass around my neck, so I don't need anything else. I always use that anyway. And yeah, I know the area pretty well and I know what direction I'm going to go, so that's fine. And what I have for first aid? Okay, I've got a quick first aid kit here. I'm going to throw that in my pocket. Okay, and now on the way out the door, I'm just going to call two friends and tell them where I'm going. And if they don't hear from me by this time, hey, right? So it can literally take like 2 minutes
Yeah.
to throw some things in your pocket, to run through those five basic needs, get some things in your pocket, walk out the door, let a couple people know what's going on, and at least you're minimally covered now if something happens, right?
Of course, you have to do none of this if as long as you can find a 3 or 4 year old that you can bring along with you, because then
Exactly.
you're basically
That, that
guaranteed your survival.
exactly. That could teach you what to do. Just put them in charge. You'll be fine.
When are you coming back to Vermont?
Let's see. I think it's probably maybe March, but more likely June. I'm about to probably in the next 2 weeks or so. So about middle of November, I'm gonna have hopefully a new website up and I'll have all my classes for 2026 up there. So June, I'm hoping to stay for like 2 or 3 weeks and run several classes around the state. I love wilderness. I hope we continue to protect wild areas and wild spaces. There's something of value, I think, for everyone. We are only human when are in connection and conviviality with what is not human. And so I think preserving those spaces is really important, and people won't protect them. We won't vote to protect them if we don't connect to them and if we don't feel safe in them. So, yeah, stay safe out there and have fun and go out and explore it. There's nothing like wilderness. We have no substitute for what it does for the human psyche and what it does for the world.
That wraps it up for this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company. Thanks to Jesse Krebs, and thank you for listening, and stay safe out there.